There we go. Well, hello, everybody. This is the Skeptic and the Mystic. We are on episode 48. We're almost coming up to 50 whole episodes.
Oh, it's 48 or 47. I thought it was 47.
Well, I don't know. Our notes say 48, but if we're wrong, we'll correct it.
I have one place that says 47, one place that says 48.
Okay.
So that's all my fault.
We're on episode 47 or 48. We're a little out of our rhythm, but that's okay because we are here to talk about protecting our energy during the holiday season. And that's part of why we are out of our rhythm, because sometimes we need to even protect our own energy. So yeah, we are going to chat about some ways that you can really manage yourself, manage your time, and hopefully not get drained by the holiday season, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. So, this is really bothering me because I'm like, where did I write the episode number? It's going to drive me nuts.
Yeah. Whenever it's like published with text, we will have it correct.
Yeah. So, okay. This one, huge one, and it can apply to any time of year as well. And especially this time because we're in this full swing holiday season. And for some people, it's a great time of year. They love it. They thrive off of like, go, 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 being around people all the time. And then there's some people who are like myself and others are like, can we just skip this time of year? Can we just bypass all of it?
I feel like I am landing somewhere in the middle of this year all of a sudden. Like I've often in the last few years felt like sad. And now I'm like, okay, some days I'm like kind of excited that it's the holidays. And then some days I'm back to, no, don't invite me to your party.
You got a really good, like by yourself Thanksgiving, right?
I had it completely by myself. Well, my daughter was here for a little bit, but yes, pretty much completely solo Thanksgiving, which did not make me sad. In the past it has. Well, the only part that made me sad this year was in the afternoon when my daughter was here, she continually whined about how crappy it is that we have no family, which I was like, well, I mean, I've lived on the planet a lot longer, I guess, and I've reconciled that that's just my fate. She has the only child and no family living in the same city. Woe is me, little syndrome going on. And she invited like 5 different friends over. And of course, no one could come because they're doing family things.
Right. Oh, that's hard. I didn't think about that.
Yeah. So she guilted me. But my sister's coming for Christmas this year. So, it still will only be 3 of us, but at least it will feel more like we have family for Christmas.
Yeah. I think I might just do a solo Christmas. I'm kind of leaning towards that. I'm like, do I just day by myself to like study, catch up on stuff that I'm learning, courses I'm doing?
Honestly, I mean, I know that everybody's situation is very, very different, but sometimes those days I find to be the most just like you can read a book, you can do whatever you want because everyone else is busy and they're basically leaving you alone.
It's
like
don't be in an airplane. Like you're like, I got nothing else to do but do this work. I gotta do it.
Exactly. That's a good analogy. Yeah, it's like being on airplane mode all day.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So today we're going to talk about a couple of things. We're going to talk about what it is that needs management. A lot of times people think this time of year they have to manage their time, and it's not their time that needs to be managed. We're going to talk about a framework to help you go from disempowered to empowered. It literally could be within 5 minutes, if you so choose. And then we're going to talk about 5 P's to help you be in charge of your energy. So grab a pen, grab a paper, take some notes. We're going to fly through some of this. So the first thing that we have to understand is that it is not time that needs to be managed. And when you think about the last time you were doing something that you absolutely loved, that was like you're just like, oh my gosh, this is one of my favorite things. Right? And think about your relationship with time then. What did you think of, Deb?
I'm smirking because literally as we were small talking, or we often just catch up before we go on air. It's not even small talk, but I was just saying part of why we didn't end up recording a show or an episode last week was because I had an opportunity to subteach a yoga class at a studio that I really have always loved and want to be part of. I also did a sound healing. I subbed another yoga class at that same studio. And it's funny because I said, last week I took on a lot of extra stuff. Every evening last week I had something going on and I was like completely energized by it. Versus, sometimes
Yes.
when you're like, oh my God, I'm doing so much, I'm so tired. What was the phrase? I just said it. You're not tired because you're doing too much. You're tired because you're not doing enough of what lights you up.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that it is funny because that is all time that I had to exert, energy that I had to exert, yet it fueled me. And an hour teaching yoga goes by so fast for me.
Yeah. Yeah. So, and that whenever we're doing something we love, it's like time just flies, and it's just like, where did time go? Like in a good way. But when we're doing something that we dread, right? It's just like, oh my gosh, this time is going so slow. And it has nothing to the time, like an hour is an hour, right? That didn't change. It's literally your emotions about and your energy in that time. And so
your perception of it is different.
Right. So during this time, it's not about, okay, I got to manage this time. And from this time to this time, I go to this. Like you can have the best managed calendar. And if your energy isn't managed, if you're not clear about how it is that you want to feel, you can have the worst time in the world. It's just like when people, you ask them like, oh, how was your trip? They're like, oh my gosh, it was so amazing. It was so great. Blah, blah, blah. Or they'll be like, oh my gosh, it was horrible. This happened and this happened. But they don't say, oh, it was 6 days and 6 hours and 45 minutes. Right? They don't never answer in like the exact time, right? Because people, like when you ask how's your time, everybody knows you're really asking about like, how did you feel? How was it for you? Right?
Yeah.
And so our energy is what we need to manage. So managing your energy. There's a lot of different things, and we'll talk about some of these, but I want to first go through a framework to help get you through the holidays. And so I should have posted these up beforehand, but there is a framework that I love that I've kind of, and that isn't the coaching world, that I added one little thing to that I think a lot of times people don't talk about. I'm going to pop it up here, see if it goes on to, okay. Yeah, there we go. Okay. So, see if I can edit this. I just want to edit it for real fast. So the framework is, when you look at, let me just fix this. When you look at what is going on, you want to think about what's the result that you want to have. Okay. Still didn't change it, but I want to. Anyway.
You're trying to stack them?
I was trying to get the colons gone and put commas. Whatever. So you want to first look at what's the result that you want. Like when you're going to a holiday function with your family, like what is it that you want to experience? Okay, and get clear on that. Like I want to have a great time connecting with my family. Like my result is deep connection. Okay. And so then there's two ways that you can look at this. One, you could look at this as the empowered experience or the disempowered experience. Right? And when you look at the result, I'm going to back into this and then we'll kind of talk through it, is that we look at our results and then we ask, okay, what action do we need to take to get that result? What's the feeling that we need to have that will propel that action? Right? What's the thoughts that we need to have to create that feeling? And what's the belief that creates the thought, that creates the feeling, that creates the action, that creates the result? It'd be much better if these were stacked. So one, I want to go through, there are different beliefs that we have that rob us of our energy. Okay. There's beliefs like it's my responsibility to make everybody happy. And that's a big one over the holidays, right? Or there's everything needs to be perfect. Right? There's a lot of that, like everything needs to look perfect, taste perfect, all those kind of things. Or I have to say yes to every invitation or people will judge me, reject me, right?
That's the one that always gets me. Like I appreciate the invites and then I feel guilty when I want to pass.
Or I need to eat whatever they put in front of me. Right? Those all are big ones that rob us of our energy. And the last one, because when we eat something that we know is not healthy, like good for us, and then it ultimately robs us of our energy. But even that, that feeling of being obligated, right, robs us of our energy. So And want to look at this. If we have the belief, right, that it's my responsibility to make everybody happy, what happens then is a thought that can come up would be, if I don't do everything, then they'll be mad at me. Right. So you just want to ask yourself, like, what's a belief that I have, right? And then what's the thought that comes with it? And then, and again, this is just an example. And then when you look at the feeling, when you think that thought, how do you feel? And most people would say, I feel heavy. I feel contracted. I was like, oh, right. And then what's the action, right, that you do when you have that belief, that thought, and that feeling? And the action is like, oh, I just say yes to everything, even though I don't want to. And then the coaching world typically stops there with this little, belief, thought, feeling, action. And I was like, okay, but everything is all about patterns that we do, right? And so then what's the pattern? Like, when you say yes to everything that you don't want to do, what's the ultimate result? Well, the ultimate result is that you feel resentful, you feel burnout, you're not your best self, right? That's not the result that anybody wants to have, right? And so you can literally sit down on paper and, and do this, look at it as a situation where you felt really disempowered and be like, okay, what was the result? And just back up. What was the action that I did? What was the feeling I had? What was the thought that I had? What was the belief that I had? Every single thing that we do, excuse me, I'm getting congested. I don't know why. It only started talking. Everything that we do always starts with a belief, always. If we can shift the framework of our belief, then we can shift everything, right? But our beliefs will always create the feeling. And there's things that can happen that are traumatic, where the feeling comes, you get hit by a car. Of course, you're going to feel, you see a car coming at you, you're going to feel, scared. But even under that, there's a belief, like if you believed you're invincible, then you're like, whatever, a car's coming at me. But, you believe, oh my gosh, I'm going to die. Your body goes into terror. And it will always have a belief, even if it's like super instantaneous and super quick, right? So if we looked at this from an empowering state, right, the belief could be that it's not my responsibility to make everybody happy. How good does that feel? Right? Like, how relieving is that? And then the thought that you could have, would be that the people who love me will want me to feel good. Oops, I didn't put it all there. The people who, let me change that. Oops. The people who love me will want me to feel good and will understand if I need to say no. And if they don't, that's their problem. Which I know is really hard for somebody who's a people pleaser. You're hearing this and you're like, but Heather, you don't understand. And I don't fully. I think Deb can more than me, because I'm just usually like, nope, don't want to do it. And at the end of the day, right, like, who made you responsible for their feelings and their emotions?
Right. I definitely was just this weekend talking with someone who was dealing with a tough family dynamic and trying to extract herself. And it is that easy, but it's not that easy. Especially family dynamics. It's one thing when it's friendships, you can decide that someone is toxic for you. And if they don't support you in that way, then you don't need to be friends with them. Family, I think, is a little bit harder for people to set that boundary around. Takes a lot more practice.
It does take a lot of practice. And when you said, like, it really is that easy, but it's not. It's like, it's not, because we then make it with what we believe, right? About how we should be, how we shouldn't be, and there's this fear underlying, like, what do we fear is going to happen? Right?
Well, but then there's a primal fear of rejection from the tribe. Right? Like, if you say no to your family, there's a primal fear that they're going to kick you out. Right? Yeah. And maybe a legitimate fear for some people. And maybe that means being cut off from resources, right? It snowballs, right?
Yes.
So yeah, it can get complicated. I agree. But for the simplicity's sake, I really like this framework, because oftentimes it's a story we believe to be true that may or may not be true.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So when we have that thought, then it creates the feeling of feeling light and expansive. Right. And when anytime you're feeling light and expansive, that energy flows out to everybody else. Right. And everybody just wants to feel good over the holiday season. Nobody wants to be around somebody who's stressed and like, no, we have to have this perfect. I mean, how's it perfect if everybody looks all good, but everybody knows, oh yeah, in that picture we were all miserable, but we're sitting there smiling.
Right.
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 So the feeling is light and expansive. And then the action is, saying yes to things that I can say yes to. And for the people pleaser, I want you to hear this, because a lot of times the thing is, but I can't say no. I feel bad saying no. And here's the thing is that you don't ever have to say no this holiday season. Right? You have a bunch of different things. You've made some commitments to some things, and then something comes along and somebody's like, oh, come to this, blah, blah, blah. And instead of saying no, you say, I'd love to, but I've said yes to something already. Right? Say yes to what you've already said yes to. Right? And
Even if that yes is staying home in your PJs by yourself.
yes. Yep.
That's my big life hack is you can simply say, I've already got a commitment. I already said yes to something else. However you want to phrase it. Nobody has to know what that thing is.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big one that I hear from so many people that I work with when they're like, oh, I feel bad saying no. And I'm like, you don't ever have to. You literally just like, oh, I said yeses. It's literally just like if you're married and you have an attractive person come up to you, and like proposes, you guys getting together, you're not saying no to them. You're like, I'm married. Like you're saying, I'm saying yes to my partner. Right? You're not saying no to them. You're just saying yes to what you've already committed yourself to.
Okay. So just to be devil's advocate and challenge you here, like maybe people are thinking, what happens when the person inviting them is saying, say, for example, your mom is saying you have to come for Christmas and you truly don't want to for whatever reason.
Mm-hmm.
And you say, oh, I'd love to, but I already said yes to this. And then she's going to say, who the hell could be more important than your mother? Why can't you just say no to that and then say yes to me? And, so then I can see where people find it even more difficult to maybe concede, and it's your mother, and all the obligations come back.
Yeah. So then it goes to, okay, what's the result that you want? Right? Is it like in this example, when it's empowered, it's like, the result is feeling energized, relaxed, loving towards self and others. And so, okay, there may be a time where you say yes to that obligation, because ultimately, like the bigger picture is it's something that is going to get where you want it to be.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I had an event this weekend. My nephew got married, and it's always been super important to me to be present at my nieces and nephew, like in their life. And I have been. I mean, they've said that. I just was so tired from being away the weekend before, and I'm like, I don't feel like driving. Like it was not something it's not that I didn't want to go, but I didn't want to, like, does that make sense? Like, I wanted to go, but I was like tired and I didn't really like want to get in my car and drive 3 hours and all that kind of stuff. But I focused on what is the result that I want. The result that I want is my nephew to know how important he is to me. That, I'm going to be there. Right. And that superseded my, like, I just want to be at home in my own bed. Right. And so we can have those things as somebody like, oh, come on. It still comes down. You have to check into yourself. What's the ultimate result that you want? Right. And if, mom is like, oh, but, giving you the guilt trip and that kind of stuff, you have to like just decide what ultimately is it that you want to create.
Right.
And again, it's easy. It's not always simple, but it's important, because if we're letting other people dictate constantly, what we're doing, you're just giving your power away, and then your energy is drained. Right. And people don't like it when we change patterns, because then it forces them to change their pattern. Right? But if you're listening to this, right, then you're somebody who wants to change patterns and know that it's going to be uncomfortable for some people every once in a while. right?
Right,
But
right. And always going back to, it's really not, their reaction is not anything that you have to hold any sort of responsibility for.
right.
People are choosing their own reactions.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So then, okay, so that's that the framework that is just, I think, super helpful. I'm just gonna put it up here one more time, see if it will go the right way. And again, just take the time to write out. It keeps putting the colons up here. That's what it does. Just take the time to write out.
It's okay.
I keep erasing them, but it keeps.
Listen to the words we say, not what's typed on the screen.
Right. Take the time and just write this out literally, and you can go either way, because you can look at a situation, like a past situation, and be like, what's the belief that I had? What's the thought that was then created? What's the feeling I experienced? What's the action? And then what's the result that it gave me? Right. And so you can do it retroactively, or you can look at it from the future and say, what's the result that I want? What's the action I would need to do to get that? What's the feeling that action will create? What's the thought that I'm going to choose to focus on? What's the belief that I'm going to have?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. And a lot of times people get belief and thought confused, because they're like, oh, the same thing. And so I'll say, like, for me, in the holiday season, we've talked about a ton, like, for me, eating sugar just sends me down a path that is no bueno at all. Right.
Mhm.
And so if I looked at this, like, from the past, I made some, cookies, some pies for Thanksgiving. Well, and then I end up eating it. Right. And so the belief that I have is like, oh, I could eat this one piece of pie and it's not going to bother me. Right. And then the thought is like, it's okay for me to eat one piece. Right. And the feeling is conflicted because I know that like, that's not
Right.
true. Right. But I'm conflicted with myself. The action is eat half a pie. And then the result I'm not, it's a true story. And the result is like, my energy's low. I'm depressed. I'm really quick to be triggered. I'm like, that's just not the result that I want.
Right.
When I can look at it logically through that step, it's like, oh, okay. So the next time I'm like, okay, now we go into another holidays. I'm bringing baked goods, for my, when I have my bakery, all these recipes. And then I'm like, okay, what's the result I want going into this, Heather? So what's the action? I have to create a plan to like get rid of all that food and to like tell somebody I'm only eating 3 cookies,
Right.
And then what's the feeling? Well, I feel so much more free when I do that.
Right.
What's the thought? I deserve to feel good is the thought. And the belief is when I eat that stuff, I feel like crap.
Right. Right.
Mhm.
I think the other piece of going back to saying no to family, or being okay with releasing the responsibility for others.
Mhm.
Um, Sometimes, I mean, it's a little off track of what you're saying, but sometimes I think it's helpful to, if, say, for example, it is like saying no to your mom or some family member that is going to likely cause a guilt trip or something like that. But
Mhm.
like, I almost would say, like, give the catastrophic answer. So, like, if I say no to this, what's the worst thing that's going to happen? And
Mhm.
then, oh, mom's going to fly off the handle. She's going to do this. Well, then you go to the, is that even true?
Mhm.
Right? How do you know that that's true? How do you know that that's going to be her reaction? And then kind of playing it out, and then giving yourself some rehearsed kind of, if she says this, this is how I would respond. If she says this is how I respond. So having some sort of playbook for how this is going to go down, so that you have a little catalog of ways that you can manage this and protect yourself.
Yeah.
Like, she's going to guilt trip me, and I'm going to remind her, I'm not responsible for how you feel about this, and, however it works for you, but play it out. And then oftentimes the worst case scenario that we're imagining it's never really, not never, but it's rarely as bad as we envision it's going to be.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Do you watch
Yeah.
This Is Us?
No, I've never
No.
seen it. People have mentioned it a lot, but
It's
no.
such a good show. It's such a good, if you ever want something to binge, it's such a great show.
If
On
I
so
ever want something to cry about, that's what
yeah, for sure. Yeah, 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 yeah. So great. And yeah, it's so great. But one of the things that one of the characters that's like he and his wife do, like something will be going on. It's like, okay, worst case scenario,
Mhm.
and sometimes he's like, oh, that was really dark. Like,
Right?
you know?
Yeah. Sometimes
but
it's a game to see how bad, but I mean, like, it's kind of the case with almost anything that you are fearful of. We
well,
usually imagine far worse than reality.
and when we can speak it out, so there's this is kind of the thing, like once we can get it out of our body, it's like, oh, okay. Because like once we put it's in our body, it's like building up and building up. But when we can like be like, what? It's like that was it. Like, okay,
Yeah. Yeah.
not
Exactly.
as
Yeah.
not as bad. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm.
Okay, I derailed your thoughts. You had so many more
No,
topics.
no, no. So okay, so then there's five. I call them. Well, as I was writing this up, I'm like, oh, there's five P's of what we can do to help you be in charge of your energy. Um, and so the first one, I mean, you're all going to be like, yep, we know this, and we have to say it, right? So it is to prioritize your mental and physical health. Like this, like you can't pour from an empty cup, right? You absolutely, if you care about everybody that you're around, right, and you want to make the holidays the best that they can be, you being in your best energy is an absolute priority.
Mhm.
And so whatever that looks like for you, if you know that you need to go to bed by 10, go to bed by 10, right? If you need to like meditate in the morning, meditate in the morning. Like people will not I can't say people will not. A healthy person, right, will not get on your case, for you taking some time for you.
And I will remind anyone that if someone is going to razz you, that was a silly expression, but if someone's gonna
They're
be
years.
angry at you or make crude remarks because you want to practice healthy behaviors, it says a heck of a lot more about them than it does you.
Right.
We've talked about this in the past, and we've talked about, drinking or sugar. Like me saying I would not like to have a drink, if there is a friend or someone in my life that's like, "Come on, have a drink with me. Can't believe you're not drinking," says way more about their discomfort with their own practices around alcohol than it does mine. So just keep that in mind. If someone I because I'm a go to bed early and get up early person, and every once in a while someone will tease me about that, and I'm like, I mean, maybe you're jealous because you wish you were that way, but like I don't get on anyone else's case because they want to stay up late and sleep later. Cool, practice you, you
Right.
know?
Yeah. And typically when somebody is, it's because they feel bad about themselves and what they're not doing for
Right.
themselves and caring for themselves. And you do not
Exactly.
need to take that on. You just
Right.
don't.
Right. If they're gonna try to force cookies down your throat so they feel better about the 5 they ate, it's not your problem.
Yeah, that was a huge one because when I started changing my eating habits and, I'd have people like, come on, just have a little bit of fun. And I was like it was like going out and getting ice cream. And I'm like, okay, so a little bit of fun entails if I could do that, what that means is I'm going to be in the bathroom with diarrhea like for the next 24 hours. So are you going to come and sit with me in the bathroom too? And they're like,
Right.
no. And I'm like, no, I'm legit serious. Like,
Yeah.
and when I get my period too, I'm going to be in there vomiting and diarrhea. So like, are you going to come and sit with me then? And they're like,
Right.
I literally would say that to people. Like, and I understand people like, I
That
would
will
be
shut them down pretty quick.
right. Because ultimately I'm like, I'm the one who has to go to bed with me. Like, and
Yeah.
I had too much time being miserable, like when I ate crappy, that it's like I have to make myself a priority. And the good thing is that my family likes me so much more now that I care for myself than when I didn't. And
Mhm.
we have such better time together majority of the time, like
Yeah.
because when everybody's caring for themselves, everybody is in their highest energy. And that's what we want ultimately, right? For the holidays,
Yeah.
is just to feel good and be in good energy.
Right.
Yeah.
And you're likely to inspire other people. I mean, number 1, yes, the good energy is it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's catchy, just like bad energy is, but
Contagious.
also it's contagious. There was the word. God, I couldn't come up with it. Anyway, but also you might inspire them to think more about their own behaviors too.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah,
yeah.
for sure. Yeah. Yeah. So then that leads right into the next one, which is to pour self compassion all over yourself. Right.
Yes.
Like you may not want to be around people, you may be grieving a loss. For so many people, this may be the first holiday that you are without someone that you love. Right? It's okay to say, like we talked about earlier, like, I'm saying yes to this other thing. Okay? It is perfectly okay. Like, any feeling that you have is a message for you, and just take some time to listen, to see what that message is, to see what it is that you need, right? So
Mhm.
that you can give others, like, that you can ultimately give others what you want to give to them, but you can't if your cup is empty.
Right.
And
Right.
so be gracious with yourself, be gentle,
Yes.
right?
And when you slip up and either blur your own boundaries or have the drinks or the sugar or the thing that you didn't want to have or didn't think you know what I mean? When you make the mistakes, you still just be gentle with yourself. Tomorrow's a new day, begin again, right?
Mhm. Yeah. Yep. So that leads, you're just doing a good segue, is boundaries, right? So the third P is place healthy boundaries in your life. And so this is a whole topic, that people write, have courses on and stuff. So boundaries is, again, hard this time of year, because for people who are like people pleasers, like want to be around people all the time, it can be really challenging. Especially, there's certain personality types within it. There's a certain everybody's heard of, like, Myers-Briggs and Enneagram. There's another one called the DISC, and within the DISC, there's a personality that's like life of the party, and then the one that's like steady, stable, and like just wants to, like, be by themselves. And the combination, that personality combination, they're like, I still want to go home, but I kind of want to. I was like, I still want to go out, but then I kind of want to be home by myself, and they can get
This is me
conflicted so
too.
much. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
have I have very high in both of those,
Mm-hmm.
the green and the yellow, and, yeah. I mean, what I've learned for myself, if anybody can relate to being, extroverted and introverted, is that I do love to go out and be around people, and I do love to, share and have, experiences involving other people, right? Like parties or even teaching yoga, those sorts of things. But then the counter to that is I have got to recharge alone.
Yeah.
And if I don't get one or the other, like if I'm alone too much, I'll get lonely. But if I'm around people too much, I'll get like, oh my gosh, I just can't anymore.
Yeah, and so it's knowing that about yourself to build in times of recovery.
Mhm.
And so, and then even within the times with people, if you're going to be around family and that everybody has very differing views on what's going on in the world, like, it's okay to beforehand send out an email to everybody and say, like, how about we make this a, like, political, I can't say the word, like, politic free zone,
Yeah.
right? We're not talking about politics. We're not talking about the current state of medical interventions in the country. We're not, like, we're not
Right.
talking about, all that stuff. Like, we're just gonna, enjoy each other. And I think most people would be glad, because it's like, I mean, everybody's just exhausted by it.
Yes, I was just gonna say, I think I would be someone invited me to a party where we had like these are the words that are off limits, one of them being COVID, and like we're not talking pandemic, we're not talking any of this, we're not talking about politics. I would be like, I'm in. And what
Right.
happens? I don't know what's the penalty if you say it. That would be a fun party actually.
Right.
Someone says any of the banned words, what happens? They have to
You're
put $100 in the pot, and then we do a drawing at the end or something.
Yeah. Yeah. So create boundaries, create a container. A lot of times we're not intentional about what we do, and we just go in and it's just like, oh, what happened? Instead of saying, I'm going to intentionally create this container, that I'm going to be in. And so create some boundaries, say, well, what's important to you and what's not. Right.
Mhm.
So then the next P is to pause when making decisions about caring for your body. Again, we don't often go in with a plan about how we want to feel during and after all of it. And anybody, like, when we look at this season, we go from Halloween, right, to Thanksgiving, to Christmas, to New Year's, to Valentine's. It is just like, as we said 1,000 times, it is sugar, sugar, sugar. And sugar does not help us to feel good about ourselves, even though we're like, no, Heather, you don't understand. It does. Yes. Crazy sugar addict. I do. Right. But ultimately, like it creates a low level energy in us. And so when we can say, hey, these are the standards that I want to live by. Like I can have a dessert, but not 10, right? Like I can have a drink, but not, 7, right? But be like creating this plan and pausing right before you're about to put something in your mouth and say, is this going to help me feel the way that I want to feel? Right? Or pause when you're making a decision like, oh, do I like, okay, I have the option to stay up really late, or, do I need rest? Right? Because your body, like this is your vehicle. And if your body's run down, it's really hard to have great energy.
Mhm.
And this time of year, I love it because this is the anniversary time for when I almost killed myself. And when I shifted and changed my body, like how I ate, which then changed how my body felt, which then changed my thoughts and beliefs. Like I don't walk around wanting to kill myself now, but I also don't eat like any foods that make me feel like that. Like I eat vegetables and fruits and quality meats, right? I don't eat a bunch of crappy sugars. And I still have that, like, oh, there's that cookie. Like I said, up here, I have pie. My pies are much better than what they were, but like it still can impact me. And so you just have to pause and say,
Mhm.
is this gonna help me feel the way that I want to feel? Right. So the last thing, this is where we get into some woo-woo, right? Is practice some energy management. Right. Um, so when we don't allow ourselves to feel what's happening and what's going on and feel our emotions, right, then they get stuck inside of us. When they get stuck inside of us, it creates dis-ease in our body. And we end up with these physical ailments that we're like, I don't know what's going on. Right? I don't know why my energy is low. I don't know why my body feels, whatever. So a simple exercise to help move the emotions out of your body, right, is at the end of the day to do an inventory on how you're feeling. Just ask myself, what feelings did I feel today? And I'll write that up there. So what feelings did I feel today? Okay. And then this one, it's not something that a lot of times people talk about, but then is where did I feel them in my body? Okay.
Mhm.
And then when you get in touch with that, and here's a little hint, more often than not, they're somewhere in your torso area. Often you're not like, I felt anxiety in my elbow. Like it
Right.
doesn't work typically, you know. Um,
Which, not so
it's-
coincidentally, maybe you're about to say it, that lines up with your chakra systems, you know,
Mhm.
where
Yeah.
where you feel them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And then the last one is there residue that left that still needs to leave my body? Right. And if there is, right, just notice where it is in your body. Imagine that as you breathe, with each like exhale, you're moving it from wherever it is in your body, whether it's in your stomach, down at your pelvic area, your chest, right? Each exhale, it's moving it up your torso and out of your body, and just and then imagining it coming out of you, and make any sound that needs to come out, whether it's a yawn or a scream or anything in between. Okay? And then just like dogs do or animals do when they experience trauma, just shake your body, just like move it, right? To get that energy shifted. Okay? And then check in and see if it's gone. And if no, right, repeat. And if it is, just say thank you. And
Mhm.
that's it.
I like that. Um, I'm gonna piggyback on that because one of my favorite practices and something that I do, which I think we've talked about the sound healing before. But I have, well, actually, I think this thing is always there behind me. I have the bowls that are all tuned to the chakras. And so sound frequencies, which you can find, I make custom meditations for people. I make custom sounds for people, but you can find stuff on Spotify or whatever. But if, breath work is by far, like, I think one of the most effective that you can do on your own, all by yourself, anytime, anywhere. But also looking at, like, sometimes sound can help move that stuff even more, right? Or it can help you even with finding some motion within your body. And well, even if it's just a rock song, like it doesn't have to be necessarily a certain frequency. I even read somewhere that they are making like popular style music that's tuned to certain frequencies intentionally now too. I don't know how much truth there is to,
Right.
when you find a, song by your favorite artist that necessarily is in line with that frequency. I don't actually know, I don't know a lot about that, but just music in general, sound in general, and like you said, making the sounds move, because it helps create vibrations that move things through your body. So
Yeah.
I nerd out about that stuff.
Yeah, it's so important. So, okay, so as we wrap up, then speaking of that, what are some things that you have to offer? If somebody's like, okay, I need help with dealing with this energy over this time of year. And remember, this goes into January too, because that residual stuff can carry over.
Oh, for sure. Are you asking me in particular?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously the energy medicine, the we can work with the emotion code, the body code, working with those trapped emotions with one-on-one sessions with myself or with Heather. Personally, if you are local to the Phoenix area where I live, I have some live sound healing sessions coming up. I'm doing them every Wednesday in the month of December. Today, as we're recording, this is Monday. The upcoming Wednesday, the 8th, is already full, but I think the following Wednesdays, I think the rest of them I do have openings. So 15th, 22nd, 29th. You can reach out to me if you are interested in that. I will be doing one also, I think, on the morning of the 18th for the full moon. So lots of opportunities to work with the sound frequencies with me personally. And I also do, I can do them privately for hire, and I can do them recorded. If you have like a particular area that you're looking to unlock, or some kind of just something that's gnawing at you, it's an amazing complement to the energy work to then have a custom meditation that's specific for you, works with statements that personally I have worked with you to come up with. And then we add in frequencies that align with the chakras that will help you move and release and recenter those ideas. So it's fun. That's cool stuff.
It is cool
Yeah.
stuff. It's beautiful. And I know for me, like first time I heard that stuff, I'm like, kind of wacky. But I'm like, but you think the song comes on the radio and all of a sudden you're either like, when I hear Living on a Prayer from Bon Jovi, I am back at that roller skating rink from middle school. And I am like, I got to get out there and skate. Like the
I
emotions
think,
automatically come up. Like,
yeah, exactly. It triggers stuff. Similarly to how you could smell something and all of a sudden you're like transported back to, because it's the deep recesses of our brain that
yeah,
store things like that and make these links. And so sound really can help with getting a bit deeper into that. I think sometimes that subconscious stuff. I don't know. It's very cool.
Yeah. Yeah. And so I have a special that I've been running, still running, where if you would like to clear your heart wall, which is basically this wall of emotions that are around your heart, and it stops us from connecting with ourselves, connecting with others, this time of year, family, and connecting with success. And I have a course that goes along with it. So you get the heart wall, the course, which is basically conscious level tools to help you not rebuild it. And I'm throwing in 3 other wall removers: an abundance wall removal, a success wall, and a money wall removal. And so it's a lot, as Deb can tell you. And the bonuses themselves are over $1,000. So I don't know what I decided to do that, but I'm like, hey, this sounds like a good idea. So I'll be doing that until I have 9 more spots. And so once they run out, then they're out. But I have that. So if you want to explore more about that, you can check out. So Deb, you can find Deb on Instagram at Demysticism.
Or my website is the same, demysticism.com.
Okay, I need to add that in there. All right, and then you can find me at heatheре.com, Instagram, Heather M. Esposito. So have a great, we'll see you guys in a couple of weeks. We'll be back on in a couple of weeks. But if we don't hear from you, have a great holiday. And thanks for tuning in.
Yeah. Bye.